Back in 1963, one particular James Bond movie didn't just add to a series, it launched a full-blown global obsession, and its name was From Russia with Love. Today we're going to pull the curtain aside on 21 strange and wonderful facts that have been hiding inside this Cold War masterpiece for decades. And stick with us, because there's one bonus story at the end that might just be the most powerful and poignant tale in the entire history of Bond. From secret presidential viewings to spy gadgets pulled from reality, the story runs deeper than you think. So go ahead and pour that martini, and let me say it's good to have you back at the club, the Rewatch Club. Number 1, the president's favorite novel. We're starting with a detail that completely altered the course of James Bond's cinematic destiny, all beginning in 1961 with President John F. Kennedy himself. In an interview published in Life magazine, President Kennedy listed Ian Fleming's novel From Russia with Love among his 10 favorite books of all time. That single presidential endorsement was like lightning in a bottle, causing the book to fly off shelves across the nation and immediately capturing the attention of producers Albert Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, convincing them to select it as the sequel to Dr. No. But the connection between Kennedy and this film goes somewhere far more profound. On November 20th, 1963, a mere 2 days before his tragic assassination in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was shot and killed as his motorcade passed through the heart of downtown Dallas. President Kennedy had sat down for a private screening of From Russia with Love right there in the White House. It would be the last motion picture he ever saw. That haunting and somber detail has quietly followed this film like a shadow for more than 60 years now. Number 2. The twist behind the opening kill. The film fades in on a haunting scene with James Bond stalking through a moonlit garden only to be ambushed and garroted by a shadowy assassin. It was a truly shocking way to start the movie. But then the harsh lights flicker on, revealing the trick the man who was just killed wasn't Bond at all, but a training dummy wearing a chillingly realistic mask of 007's face. Here's the fascinating part: this entire scene was never even in the original plan. It was an idea conceived by editor Peter Hunt and director Terence Young deep into post-production. They decided to lift a training exercise for the villain Red Grant and place it at the very beginning of the picture, right before the main titles even rolled. That single creative decision accomplished so much more than just opening a movie with a bang. It gave birth to the pre-title action sequence, a tradition that became an essential hallmark of every single Bond film to follow. One edit made at the last minute changed the franchise forever. Number 3, a real-life chess championship on screen. Early in the movie, we watch the SPECTRE strategist Bronstein secure a victory in a tense chess match just before he's called away to orchestrate Bond's assassination. But that game unfolding on screen wasn't just invented for the film. It was lifted directly from one of the most celebrated chess matches in the annals of the sport. The positions of the pieces on the board meticulously recreate the final brilliant moves from Boris Spassky's legendary triumph over David Bronstein at the 1960 USSR Championship in Leningrad. It was a masterful king's gambit, a game that Spassky himself would later describe as the most unforgettable one he ever played. Interestingly, the filmmakers did make a very slight alteration to the board setup. They removed 2 of the white pawns reportedly because of a mistaken belief that the sequence of moves in a chess game could actually be protected by copyright. Spassky would of course go on to become a world champion, and his single greatest game would be preserved forever on film. A brilliant coup indeed. It was immortalized in a James Bond movie, hiding a genuine piece of chess history that most of us watching never realized was there. Number 4, a beauty queen's transformation into a Bond girl. Daniela Bianchi was just 21 years young when she was cast in the pivotal role of Tatiana Romanova. And I have nothing to wear, your true soul, James. Her casting made her the youngest actress to ever portray a leading Bond girl. It was a record that she would end up holding for more than 2 decades. But long before she ever walked onto a movie set, she was already gracing the world stage. Back in 1960, Bianchi was crowned the first runner-up in the Miss Universe pageant, where she also earned the special title of Miss Photogenic. And she wasn't the film's only pageant star either. Martine Beswick and Eliza Gour, who memorably played the 2 feuding gypsy women, were both celebrated beauty contest winners in their own right. Bianchi brought to the role a captivating elegance and a deep sense of vulnerability as Tatiana, and her on-screen chemistry with Sean Connery blossomed into one of the most cherished pairings in the franchise's history. If you happen to catch our video on Dr. No, you already know that Bond girls are always unforgettable, but Bianchi truly set a new and incredible standard. Number 5. The voice that wasn't really hers. This next one is something that most fans completely miss, even if they've watched the movie over and over again. Every single word that you hear Tatiana Romanova speak was actually performed by a completely different person. Business first. I know once you've got what you want. I haven't got it yet. At the time of the filming, Daniela Bianchi spoke almost no English at all, delivering all of her lines phonetically with a pronounced Italian accent. The director Terence Young knew this approach wouldn't be believable for a character who is supposed to be a Russian cipher clerk working for Soviet intelligence. So the British actress Barbara Jefford was brought into the studio to meticulously re-record all of Bianchi's dialogue during post-production. So while it's Bianchi's captivating performance you see on the screen, it is Barbara Jefford's voice that you actually hear. This practice of dubbing wasn't at all unusual in European cinema during that era, and Bianchi would even be dubbed again in a later film, a Bond spoof called Operation Kid Brother. Maya here. Ward's gone taken out in the blast, and wouldn't you know it, I've got the box from that odd little film that featured Sean Connery's own brother Neil. You just can't invent stories this strange. Coming in at number 6, the organization known as SPECTRE was truly a product of Cold War paranoia. In the pages of Ian Fleming's original novels, Bond's primary foes were from SMERSH, a force that would leave him feeling completely cornered, utterly trapped. There was a palpable sense of no escape, as this was based on the actual Soviet counterintelligence agency. But the minds behind the movie made a very intentional shift. With the delicate tensions of the Cold War stretched to their breaking point, and the Cuban Missile Crisis still a fresh, chilling memory, the entire planet teetered on the very edge of atomic annihilation. President John F. Kennedy found himself guiding the world through what was arguably the most perilous moment of the entire Cold War era. Because of this incredibly charged atmosphere, producers Broccoli and Saltzman felt it was far too provocative to paint the Soviet Union as the clear-cut antagonist. So they conceived of SPECTRE, a completely fictional syndicate of terror that held no loyalty to any nation or political ideology. This brilliant narrative adjustment unshackled the franchise, preventing it from being tied down to one specific real-world geopolitical struggle. Suddenly, Bond was a global protector ready to confront evil from any corner of the map in any era. It was a single, masterful choice that defined the series' entire trajectory and gave us cinema's most memorable villains. This, of course, includes the mastermind himself, Ernst Stavro Blofeld. He made his cinematic debut right here in this film, seen only as an enigmatic presence, that hand coolly stroking his iconic white cat. And are you completely certain she still thinks you're the one running the show for Soviet intelligence operations? At number 7, we witness the genesis of Q. For any Bond enthusiast, Q stands as one of the most cherished figures in the entire cinematic universe, the man whose branch provides the most brilliant gear. This is something we're giving to all our agents. He was the resident genius, the man who equipped 007 with his most unbelievable and imaginative gadgets. But the witty, charming Q that we all grew to adore was truly born right here in the story of From Russia with Love. This piece fits snugly into the case right against the side just so. It's held by magnets ensuring it stays put. The wonderful actor Desmond Llewelyn first stepped into those shoes for this movie, taking over from the original actor Peter Burton. Burton had played the part in Dr. No, but under the name Major Boothroyd. Llewelyn, however, would make the role his own across 17 Bond films over an incredible 36 years. This amazing run secured his place as one of the most enduring and beloved actors in the franchise's long history. That very first introductory scene in From Russia with Love, where he walks Bond through the secrets of his trick briefcase, became the blueprint for every beloved Q branch moment that would ever follow. From pens that doubled as explosives to cars that could vanish into thin air, every wild invention can trace its roots back to one man, one very special briefcase, and this very film. Number 8, the villain who needed a little lift. Robert Shaw's turn as the Spectre assassin, Red Grant, remains one of the most chilling and formidable performances in the whole of Bond's history. What exactly is your strategy? It would be much clearer if you could show me on a map. I understand. He was cold, methodical, and incredibly intimidating. Grant felt like a true rival to Bond in every conceivable way. But there's a little secret that Shaw himself once shared on The Tonight Show. In reality, he stood about 4 inches shorter than the towering Sean Connery. To preserve that illusion of Grant as this monumental physical threat, the crew had Shaw stand on a simple wooden crate for many of their shared scenes. But even with that difference in height, his performance radiated such power that it captured the imagination of a brilliant young director named Steven Spielberg. Many years down the road, it was Spielberg who would cast Shaw as the unforgettable grizzled shark hunter Quint in the blockbuster Jaws. That role would become just as iconic, proving that one phenomenal performance as a Bond villain could launch an entirely separate legendary cinematic journey. Number 9, an Oscar nominee with a deadly sense of style. The decision to cast Rosa Klebb is still celebrated as a moment of pure genius in the Bond legacy. While training is certainly valuable, there is simply nothing that can take the place of first-hand experience. I couldn't agree more. We also make use of live targets. The director Terence Young has selected the Austrian-born Lotte Lenya for the part after simply hearing one of her musical albums. You see, Lotte Lenya was far from your typical screen actress. She was a celebrated Tony Award winner renowned for her stage work in Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill's The Threepenny Opera, and she had just received an Academy Award nomination for The Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone. At 61 years old, she brought this terrifying, almost reptilian quality to Klebb, a chilling presence that no younger performer could have possibly replicated. And of course, we have to talk about those shoes. The poison-tipped blade that sprang from Klebb's footwear instantly became one of the most legendary weapons in the entire Bond universe right after the movie premiered. Lotte Lenya later joked that whenever she met people, their eyes would instinctively dart down to check her shoes. That role truly made her a cinematic immortal. And for number 10, the brutal fight on the train. The climactic struggle between Bond and Red Grant inside the Orient Express is still hailed by critics and fans alike as one of the most masterfully executed hand-to-hand combat sequences ever put on film. And bringing it to life was an incredible challenge. Director Terence Young, who had actually been a boxer at Cambridge, personally designed the fight's choreography with stunt coordinator Peter Perkins. The entire sequence required 3 grueling weeks of filming, all crammed into the claustrophobic confines of that train car. Incredibly, Sean Connery and Robert Shaw were determined to perform nearly the entire brutal fight on their own. They only relied on their stunt doubles for a single solitary shot in the entire finished scene. The realism was so visceral that it actually made some on the production crew quite nervous. There is no score here, only the visceral sounds of the fight, the impact of fists, strained, grunts, and the steady rhythmic drumming of the train on its tracks. It was a moment of raw, claustrophobic brutality that established a new high-water mark for action, one that the franchise has been reaching for ever since. And before we get to our next point, if you're loving this journey back into the world of Bond, it would mean the world to us if you'd tap that like button. Go ahead and share your all-time favorite Bond moment down in the comments, and be sure to subscribe if you want to keep these stories coming. We've journeyed through Dr. No and explored films from every single Bond era, from Connery and Moore, all the way to Brosnan and Craig, so believe us, there's so much more to discover here. Tell us which Bond film is your absolute favorite, we'd love to know. All right. At number 11, Connery's best-kept secret. Sean Connery was just 32 years old during the filming of From Russia with Love, and on screen, he was the absolute embodiment of powerful masculine charisma. He was cool, confident, and utterly in command, whether he was charming a beautiful agent or examining the floor plan of a Russian consulate. But behind that perfect image was a secret hidden in plain sight. You see, Connery had been dealing with hair loss since his early 20s and actually wore a toupee for his entire tenure as James Bond. These weren't just any hairpieces, they were custom-made and meticulously cared for, creating an illusion so seamless that virtually no one in the audience ever suspected a thing. What's charming is that Connery himself was completely open about it later in life, often discussing it with a wonderful sense of humor. He once joked that his hair started thinning at 21, but he refused to let it get in his way. It's one of those fascinating details that once you know, it makes you see his classic Bond performances in a whole new light. It turns out the world's most famous secret agent was keeping a pretty good secret of his own, wasn't he? Coming in at number 12, the briefcase that changed everything. The attaché case Q presents to Bond in this film is so much more than just a clever movie prop. It's the very scene that kicked off Bond's long and legendary tradition of incredible gadgets, revealing hidden compartments with deadly surprises inside. Tucked away inside this unassuming case was a folding AR-7 sniper rifle complete with 20 rounds of ammunition ready for action. Just imagine an AR-7 folding sniper rifle of .25 caliber. Flat throwing knife, 50 gold sovereigns concealed within the lining, and a tear gas cartridge set to detonate if opened by the wrong hands. What made it so special was that production designer Sid Kane actually constructed it as a fully practical prop, with all the compartments genuinely working as designed. Compared to the wildly imaginative gadgets that would appear in later films, this briefcase had a gritty realism to it. It felt grounded, like a tool a real-world operative might actually use. It truly established the blueprint for the entire gadget tradition and remains one of the most sophisticated and elegant spy tools in the history of the franchise. Every wild invention that followed, whether it was a personal jetpack or an invisible car, can trace its lineage straight back to this one iconic briefcase. Number 13 is a true cinematic what-if. This is honestly one of the most tantalizing what-if scenarios in the entire history of cinema. Can you even imagine? Following the breakout success of Dr. No, the master of suspense himself, the legendary Alfred Hitchcock reportedly showed genuine interest in directing a Bond adventure. With Hitchcock's unparalleled gift for building suspense, it would have been a perfect marriage of talent and material. But the collaboration sadly never happened, likely because of the cost. Just paying Hitchcock's directing fee would have eaten up a huge portion of the film's budget. And so the dependable Terence Young returned to the director's chair. And yet, even without him directing, you can absolutely feel the shadow of Hitchcock's influence all over. From Russia with Love. The gripping helicopter chase, for example, feels like a direct and loving homage to the terrifying crop duster sequence in his classic North by Northwest. And beyond that, the film's entire atmosphere of nerve-wracking paranoid suspense feels deeply inspired by his work. So while Bond never officially received the Hitchcock treatment, this film is undeniably the closest we ever came. And stick around, because our bonus fact at the end is a story you truly will not forget. Number 14, the budget essentially doubled overnight, all thanks to the unexpected blockbuster success of Dr. No. That first film, remember, had been produced on a fairly modest budget of around $1 million. It was a bit of a gamble, but after witnessing those box office receipts, United Artists decided to truly open up the vault for the sequel. The studio immediately doubled the production budget to $2 million and gave Sean Connery a significant bonus of $100,000 on top of his $54,000 salary. That infusion of cash allowed the production to shoot on location in stunning Istanbul and to construct some truly spectacular and elaborate set pieces. This also meant a much grander production scale, which ultimately set the series on its course to become one of the most profitable franchises in movie history. And that big investment paid off spectacularly. From Russia with Love brought in over $12 million worldwide in its first release, more than doubling the earnings of Dr. No. The James Bond franchise was no longer a risky proposition. It was an absolute goldmine. And at number 15, we have the hidden theme song. When you think of James Bond, you almost immediately think of those bold, iconic opening theme songs. But From Russia with Love handles its music in a uniquely subtle and beautiful way. The official title song, performed by the British crooner Matt Monro, doesn't actually play during the opening credits. You only hear a gorgeous instrumental version of the melody over the titles. You don't hear the full vocal version until the movie's final perfect scene, as it plays over the closing moments of Bond and Tatiana as they drift through the romantic canals of Venice. It's an unforgettable cinematic choice, isn't it? This movie also marked the first time the great John Barry served as the primary composer, and he even traveled to Istanbul with the production team to soak up the local culture for musical inspiration. Monroe's smooth romantic delivery became the perfect counterpoint to the action, creating a sound that was pure classic Bond. It was a true fan favorite, and by saving the full song for the closing moments, the film achieved a uniquely emotional finale that subsequent Bond movies have rarely managed to replicate. Number 16. Fleming's own favorite. Of all the thrilling James Bond novels Ian Fleming ever penned, From Russia with Love was the one that held a truly special place in his heart. It was his personal choice, and he had originally crafted it to be the very last adventure. Fleming was growing disheartened by the lackluster book sales and the persistent failure of any movie deal to ever come to fruition. So he composed the ending as a potential final farewell to Bond. In the book's version, Kleb's poisoned shoe blade finds its mark and 007 collapses in what looks for all the world like his death. Fleming intentionally left that ending unresolved, giving himself an out to conclude the series for good. It wasn't until the novel unexpectedly soared to become a bestseller, propelled in large part by that Kennedy endorsement, that Fleming finally decided to bring Bond back. The agent's survival was confirmed in the following book, Dr. Numb. Just think, one man's creative frustration nearly ended the most iconic spy in all of literary history. Number 17. The helicopter that got a little too close. Toward the end of the film, Bond finds himself pursued by a helicopter in a breathtaking sequence that brings to mind Hitchcock's famous crop duster scene. The unforgettable attack sequence in North by Northwest feels echoed here, but with a terrifying twist. But unlike a carefully staged Hollywood simulation, the threat in this particular scene was frighteningly authentic. Sean Connery actually performed the stunt himself, sprinting across an open field while the helicopter dove low right above him. The pilot, unfortunately, was not seasoned in stunt flying and repeatedly flew far too near Connery, genuinely putting the beloved actor's life at risk. In the movie's final cut, you can see just how razor-thin those margins really were. Connery was famously cool under pressure on set, but this was a moment that tested even his legendary composure. The fact that the tension in that scene feels so incredibly genuine isn't just a testament to great filmmaking. It's because the danger was absolutely real, and the camera was there to capture every heart-stopping second of it. Number 18, the director's own helicopter crash. As if having one near miss with a helicopter wasn't enough, director Terence Young survived his own almost fatal helicopter accident during the very same production. On July 6, 1963, while scouting locations for that incredible boat chase in Argyll, Scotland, the air was filled with the frantic energy of a scene where someone might yell, "Get out of the way." It was the kind of intense moment where the only option left is to give them a warning shot. The helicopter that was carrying young art director Michael White and a cameraman was suddenly grabbed by a fierce gust of wind and plunged straight into the water below. The aircraft sank into 40 to 50 feet of water. White was fortunately thrown clear, escaping with only a bruised elbow. The pilot's safety belt miraculously snapped, letting him swim free, but Young was trapped beneath the surface, surviving inside a tiny air pocket within the passenger cabin. The film crew desperately smashed the canopy open and managed to pull him out bleeding and completely battered from the ordeal. Incredibly, Terence Young was back behind the camera in less than an hour, continuing the day's filming as if nothing had ever happened. Number 19, the revolutionary title sequence. When the original title designer Maurice Binder had a falling out with the producers and chose not to return for this film, a graphic artist, Robert Brownjohn, stepped into the role, and his work would change the world of Bond forever. Brownjohn projected the opening titles directly onto the moving bodies of belly dancers. The result was a sensual, almost hypnotic visual journey that was completely unlike anything moviegoers had previously experienced. His inspiration actually came from the constructivist artist Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, who had experimented back in the 1920s by projecting light onto clouds. Brownjohn took that avant-garde idea and reshaped it into something alluring and deeply cinematic. This groundbreaking technique established the long-standing tradition of featuring silhouetted, scantily clad women in the James Bond opening credit sequences. It's a powerful visual motif that has remarkably endured through every single era of this legendary franchise. What began as a clever solution after the original designer departed ultimately became one of the most iconic visual signatures in the history of cinema. Number 20, the shoe knife was real. Rosa Kleb's poison-tipped blade ingeniously concealed in her shoe stands as one of the most unforgettable weapons in Bond's entire history. But this is the detail that makes it truly unnerving, according to a number of different sources. Including the film's own production trivia. The flick knife shoe was actually based on a real weapon utilized by the KGB during the height of the Cold War. Soviet intelligence agents were indeed known to carry blades that were hidden away inside their footwear. And Fleming, having served in British naval intelligence during World War II, drew extensively from real-world espionage tradecraft when he was writing his novels. That lethal shoe knife was not merely a flight of cinematic fantasy, it was inspired by the very real and deadly world of Cold War spy games. Knowing that transforms one of Bond's most theatrical moments into something far more disturbing and authentic. The line separating fiction from reality in this incredible franchise has always been much thinner than most of us ever realized. Number 21 bonus fact, the actor who gave his all. We promised you a bonus fact, and this one is a story that stays with you long after the credits have rolled. The wonderful Mexican actor Pedro Armendáriz was cast as Karim Bey, a role he got on the recommendation of the legendary director John Ford. You can almost hear him delivering that classic line, "I had visitors, limpet mine on the wall outside, time to catch me at my desk." But just as production was about to start, Armendáriz received a devastating terminal cancer diagnosis. Instead of recasting, director Terence Young completely upended the shooting schedule, filming all of his scenes first within a compressed 2-week window.